Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Creepy workplace stories. Used to work in a creepy old building. I sometimes will work there occasionally, so I thought I'd share. The building itself is in the old part of town and as such is very old itself. It used to be an antique shop, but we are not sure what it was before that. It has a ground floor, 2 upper floors and a basement. The entire building is very old-fashioned and eerie, but the basement is particularly unsettling. It has several rooms, including a bathroom, and one room that is blocked off but has a small square hole. There is no light in there, so when you look at the hole, it is just black in there. Nobody has ever actually been in there or been brave enough to shine a torch in the hole. Everyone agreed when they leave the bathroom and walk by the sealed-off room, they feel compelled to look towards the hole as they feel as if they are being watched from it. In the middle of the basement, there is also what appears to be a single meat hook, like what a butcher would hang a carcass on. We work in small teams, so there are normally only 2 or 3 of us in the building at a time. Some common things that always occurred and would continue to occur are coming in the morning to find taps running, bags or personal items left in the basement being moved, doors and cabinets slamming by themselves. Standard things. A couple of stories from there. In there with one other person. We are both on the ground floor. The cleaner is upstairs cleaning. Cleaner only comes in 2 hours a week and no one really speaks to her, so she doesn't know about any of the paranormal activity. We hear the cleaner running down the stairs. She bursts through the door to where we are. Anon. Is there supposed to be somebody else here? No. Why? There is somebody upstairs. What? Go upstairs with her to check it out. Look around all the floors and offices, completely empty. Cleaner tells me she was in the kitchen on the top floor cleaning when she saw somebody through the window on the door walk across the landing next to the stairs. The cleaner is properly shook up and always cleans upstairs really quickly now if she is up there by herself. Another time, a colleague who doesn't normally work there is here for the day. We'll call her Emily. 3 of us are in the building. The other colleague we'll call Jess. Colleague visiting for the day decides to use one of the upstairs offices to do her work. 2 of us are downstairs together, and other colleague is upstairs alone. Similar to the cleaner situation, she comes sprinting down the stairs about 10 minutes after going up, bursts into the room me and the other colleague are sitting in. Which one of you was just upstairs? Neither of us. No, stop messing with me. Which one of you was that? Tell her we have no idea what she is talking about, as we have both literally been sat here the entire time. She starts looking really pale and freaked out. Tells us what happened. She was upstairs in one of the offices looking for the remote control for the heating. Can't find it. Goes to look in another office in case someone moved it. Can't find it. Goes back into the original office and finds it sitting beside the desk. Thinks that is weird, I couldn't find it there. She picks it up and is looking at the controls when she hears a childish, high-pitched giggle, he behind her, then heard footsteps in the corridor. She started asking, Anon, Jess, which one of you was that, haha? Hello. Walks into the corridor to follow the direction of the footsteps, while calling out for us, telling us to stop messing around. When she realizes we are nowhere to be seen, she rushes downstairs to find us for us to confirm that she was on her own up there. Here is one from another colleague. I wasn't there for this one, but he told me about it, so I will retell it from his perspective. B colleague. Never worked in this building before. Not really aware of the ghost stories. I still feel creeped out by the basement, so when I need to use the toilet, I decide to avoid that one and go to the top floor. Go up to the top floor and use the toilet. As it is an old building, there is no sink in that toilet, so I have to go into the kitchen to wash my hands. While washing my hands here, the toilet door slammed. This seems odd because I closed it, but maybe I didn't close it all the way, and so it just fell into place now. Still a bit creeped out, so head quite quickly back downstairs. The stairs are very hollow feeling and loud, so running down the stairs causes some banging as I descend. Get halfway down the first flight, and notice it is not just my feet making the banging as I descend, but there is another round of banging coming down from up the stairs behind me. Too scared to stop and look, feel like a kid running up the stairs at night in the dark. Sprint as quickly as possible back to the ground floor and out of the stairwell with the banging following behind. He told me he didn't say anything to the other two colleagues for about an hour, and then when he told them and they told him about the suspected ghosts, he was shocked. He has only been back once or twice, but he will not go upstairs on his own. I have been in the building in the morning by myself sometimes and have felt like I've been followed down the stairs before, but I always just told myself it was in my head, because I know how creepy the place is. Another one I experienced firsthand isn't massively exciting, but be me. When I first started working there, don't know anything about the creepy stuff people had experienced, always working with two girls. Find it really odd that every time I go to use the toilet in the basement, the seat is up. Telling another colleague I don't understand why the girls leave the toilet seat up. He just casually responds, "Oh yeah, the ghost does that." I think the building will be sold in a couple of years, so I want to do a Ouija board there if I ever end up working back there again.
I work at a restaurant where a murder took place. While working, I'll occasionally see someone from the corner of my eye. I can't give a description of it since it's always just at the edge of my sight line. I can best describe it as a shadow person. Most of the time it just hangs around in the storage area. Why there no one knows. It will move from there and walk a few feet into the walk-in cooler. Again, no one knows why. That's when I see it most of the time. I'll be standing there with my back to the cooler and I will see it walk to the door, open it, and walk in. It never comes back out. The most direct encounter I've had was when I was walking to the cooler, and I thought I saw my coworker walk into it first before me. I walked in behind him, and no one was in the cooler. I asked my boss about it, and she confirmed she's seen it too. I asked my coworker, and he said he had it right next to him before. He thought it was a coworker talking to him from the storage area, until the person he thought he was talking to came in behind him. According to my boss and coworker, years ago before my boss bought out the place, a gangbanger got shot and killed in the parking lot there. Why his ghost would hang around the storage area and cooler is anyone's guess.
Be me, 22. I work at a hair salon in a very populated city. The workday is slow, but it's fine. I don't mind sitting on my ass. A guy comes in with a woman. Guy is in his mid-50s, balding, fat. The guy introduces the woman as his wife. The wife is easily a 8 out of 10, dressed in a tight red dress. I introduce myself. Wife speaks very broken English, says hello in a heavy Asian accent. Can't discern where from. Guy says his wife needs a haircut. Guy has no ring on his finger and neither does she. Don't really think about it too much, but getting suspicious. Start washing her hair. She looks sad. I ask if she's okay. Looks over at the guy. She nods. I go on with cutting and styling her hair. About halfway through, the guy leaves. I ask her again if she's okay. She shakes her head. Immediately get creeped out. Taught in Cosmo School to look out for human trafficking. Essentially, pimps will take their girls to salons, makeup artists, etc. when getting them ready for a client. Ask if she knows where she is. She says she doesn't know. I ask her what city we're in. She doesn't know. Finish service and tell her to wait in the back room. Call manager, she calls cops. Cops come, I explain everything. They have paramedics come out. Girl goes with them. Give a description of the guy. Cops roam around but find nothing of the guy. Cops solicit security camera footage. They leave, and the owner of the salon comes in just as the police leave. They chat a bit and eventually the cops leave. I tell the owner what happened. Doesn't seem fazed, not even a bit. We get these little cards with a number to call to a hotline for human trafficking a few days later. Fast forward again to last April. A human trafficking ring is busted in my city. Never knew if the guy was a part of that same ring or not, or if the girl went back to work for him.
I worked in a museum. Big-ass old building with a messy floor plan due to having expanded into some of the buildings next to it. Had 4 floors and 3 basements. Did an overnight stay as part of an October event. 8 teens involved, all mostly honor students, so the group was calm and didn't expect any shenanigans. The group did some activities, played discount laser tag, and ended up where they were supposed to be by midnight, put Wreck-It Ralph on the big screen. The pizza arrived hot. It was pretty successful. All the teenagers were asleep on the floor in a room on the 3rd floor. Doors were shut, and there was a bathroom right outside. There was a famous mummy in the room and a whale skull on the ceiling, but it was a very comfy place. The night was fine until 3 a.m. Heard heavy footsteps coming from outside. The building's acoustics are a crapshoot, but these were close. The other supervisor was in the room. She heard them too. All doors were still shut. Normally, the creepiest part of the facility is the smell in the toddler play area. Did head count? All teenagers were asleep. I knew at least half smoked weed before coming, so really we're not expecting any tricks. We debated. I went out first. The building was silent as a grave and was utterly dark. We were provided with heavy-duty flashlights, and I brought them. The area directly outside was the 2nd floor, which was basically a huge steel platform over the 1st that bridged the gap between one side of the building to the other and was filled with interactive stuff that was older than I was. The place was silent as a grave, but checked the floor carefully. Everything was how it should have been, except for a section with oversized wooden blocks. They were supposed to be neatly stacked, but they were scattered on the floor. Finished picking them up before I got called by the other supervisor on the cheap walkie-talkie. Sounded frantic, needed me in the corridor with the bathrooms. Found her ranting and looking freaked out. The corridor is near a kids section with all sorts of toys and make-believe objects, like playhouse and puppets and stuff. The toddler wagon was in the middle of the hallway and was full of toys. Not that bad, but it's a chunky plastic thing that would have made more noise than the footsteps we heard earlier. She eventually said that it was possible it rolled out because of the very slight slant of the floors. We considered getting a camera from the storage and setting it up, but thought against it. Night was too weird at that point. We opted to take shifts being up until 10 a.m., which was when this was over. The night was fine after that, except 2 of the girls and all 3 of the guys complained about noise coming from upstairs that woke them up. Me and the other sup didn't hear anything coming from upstairs. Another girl privately said that she thought something had touched her hair when she was asleep. 2 of the guys who were not really friends from what anyone had seen also said separately that they saw some short white shadows around corners when they were playing manhunt earlier on the 3rd floor. Kind of freaked out by this point, so I talked with some of the others there. The place officially didn't have any real history with ghosts, but one of the buildings that was merged into in the past was a tenement building. The place had a notable tuberculosis outbreak, causing it to be abandoned for some time, until being bought and half its walls being torn down. She admitted by most senior employees and avoided the 3rd basement because that was part of that building, and it also housed the antique medical equipment the museum had. She admitted that the museum had some preserved human remains that couldn't be put on display there. I got told that there was a pickled 6-year-old girl 3 stories below the room I spent the night in. As part of a fundraising gig, the party room on the top floor gets converted into something more appropriate for caterers to set up. A nice view of the city up from there, and the room's still decorated from when it was an old fancy hotel, so it's a little surreal. Had decent time, mix of crowd. Donors were usually a mix of old people with middle-aged teachers, the same demographic that donates to PBS, while keeping the museum from having a section dedicated to why coal extraction is bad for the environment. Some kids from some associated universities rounded the place out. Rest of the building was on lockdown, but I had to go downstairs to get a thing of dry ice for a cocktail trick. It should have already been up, but the service elevator wasn't cooperating when they needed to haul it. Went down with another guy who had the keys. Apparently it was still locked up in a lab in the 2nd floor. No biggie. Make it to the 2nd floor. The lab was unlocked, hauled ass with the dry ice. Everything cool except for the lab next to it having dimmed lights on. Which is a major no-no, because that's the biolab for medical displays and hands-on stuff that requires supervision, like for letting kids touch preserved cow eyes and crap like that. Other supervisor is alarmed too, and he approaches it, says it's locked. Don't know why he's such a wuss, bigger issue in leaving it open, so I get my key and open the door. Didn't like what I saw. 4 people in the room standing around a table, 2 20-somethings and 2 old elders. A youngish dude in a rough turtleneck and glasses, sort of Harry Potterish. Girl next to him in similar getup. older silver-haired dude with a gut with no shirt on, and a Mitch McConnell-looking motherfucker who also had no shirt on. The two men were standing opposite of one another at the table, while the two young'uns were standing next to each other in the back of the room. There was most of a horse fetus on the table. It was brought in from a farm to be used for a live display a few days from now, but right now it was prepped on a cutting board, and its face was mutilated. The half-naked old dude had a small knife and had a piece of raw pink meat in his mouth, blood tubes sticking out like pasta. He turned to me when I opened the door and slurped what was in his mouth with a sucking motion. I couldn't see his eyes. The silver-haired man had big sunglasses on, but he looked angry. I didn't care what the kids were doing because we hightailed it out of there, the other supervisor trying not to scream, made it back up to the party, but flagged down my boss's boss to say what I saw. She looked disgruntled but nodded once and told me to talk to her during the cleanup, gave me a 10 and said to get 2 drinks for me and the other supervisor, who was still freaked out but was talking to the college chicks. Was told later that a old-ass state university with heavy ties to the place has the okay to do initiation rituals during the after hours. She knew it was going to happen and was more pissed that they were sloppy. We had a new horse fetus by Friday.
I work at a hookah lounge in a mid-sized college town. I'm sure most of you have some idea of what that is, but in case you don't, it's a cafe where you smoke a flavored tobacco product called shisha. It's a small business, and we tend to be either very busy or very slow. It's pleasant enough work, and I like it. I don't get any breaks, but I can smoke whenever I want, eat, surf the internet, read, whatever. The only downside is I work alone on slow nights. I can handle the workload, no problem. But if anything were to go down like a robbery or something like that, I have nothing to defend myself except a hookah stem, basically a heavy stainless steel pipe. Nothing like that has ever happened. The closest thing is getting threatened by belligerent drunk customers, but the isolation still makes me paranoid. The neighboring businesses all close by 9 or 10, and we stay open late every night. People like to smoke after dark, I guess. Stupid me. I like to read spooky things on the internet when I'm bored, so a lot of empty nights I manage to scare the shit out myself. With this in mind, feel free to take my story with a grain of salt. Dismiss it as paranoia, hallucination, imagination, whatever. For what it's worth, I don't do drugs, and I rarely drink. For myself, I wish I could dismiss what happened so easily. It would make it so much easier to keep working there. I can't imagine how I'm going to work another shift alone. I don't want to give too much away about the place because, as I said, it's a college town, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of you went to school here. I don't need people coming here asking a bunch of dumb questions or whatever. Consequently, I'm not going to post any photos of the place that could be used for identification purposes, but I do have a few relevant to the story at hand. For the purpose of this story, we'll call the place Emily's Hookah Lounge. As for a bit of background, the lounge is in an old building in an old part of town. It has been in operation for about 10 years, and I don't know who leased the place before us. Because it's an old building, there are lots of creaks and groans of the building settling, the old heating and cooling units, etc. I've had to stay here overnight once when my dickhead roommates didn't pay the electric bill, and by now I'm familiar with the noises the building tends to make. Sometimes there are less explainable sounds, like the back door slamming shut when no one could be coming in or out. We joke around that there is a ghost haunting the place we call Old Man Emily's. I never believed there might actually be a ghost or any sort of malevolent entity before last night. I can already sense you all getting your TLDR gifts ready, so I'll Greentext the rest. Working solo as per usual on a Sunday night. Slow as hell night, empty by about 11 p.m., goofing around on the interwebs, bored shitless. Recently I found out about a crawl space in a mop closet from my girlfriend who also works here. George is curious.gif. GF has never looked inside the crawl space, looked horrified when I asked. George is more curious.gif. A wee bit on the spooked side already from being alone and reading creepy internet things. Steel myself up and go into the mop closet where the trap door is located. Pick related, no hinges or anything, just a square of floor that is loose. Open the trap and look in. 2-foot clearance to the dirt floor, bit of garbage and not much else. Not sure how far it goes if blocked by the foundation of neighboring buildings. Very dark and no flashlight. Anticlimactic. Close the trap door and prepare to resume boredom. Thought I heard the back door open. It locks automatically and I always make sure it's closed when I come in. I pass it off as the neighboring bike shop douchebags fucking around back there. Back to chain smoking and internets. Time passes. Finally time to close up shop. Had one more table and forgot about crawl space. Locked doors, clean hookahs, all that jazz. Mop closet is slightly ajar, but I think nothing of this as the door doesn't latch properly. Finally time for post-work shit. Lock the door behind myself because I am paranoid. About halfway through operations, hear a loud-ass slamming sound. At first I thought it's the back door again and bicycle hooligans, but it was too loud and too close. Mop closet shares a wall with the men's room. It was the goddamn trapdoor. Sorry also for the shitty photo quality, phone camera and poor lighting. I am happy about one thing. I was already sitting on the toilet. I hear a door open and there's only one goddamned unlocked door. I hear footsteps moving down the hall. Weird footsteps didn't sound like shoes. Slap slide, slap slide. Shadows are visible under the door. Bricks. The doorknob jiggles. I am keenly aware of how flimsy the door is and the slide bolt locking mechanism. A strong fourth grader could knock the door down. Doorknob jiggling ceases, and I can hear it breathing. Wet, heavy breathing like an obscene phone call. I get ready for a fight. Grab the toilet tank lid and prepare to brain whatever comes through with it. Time passes. I hear a sort of gasping sound, and the shadows were gone, just like that. I wait several more minutes, and nothing happens. I don't hear anything else. Look around. See no sign of spooky skeletons. Bludgeoning tool in hand. I decide I have to check the mop closet. The trapdoor is askew, and I know I put it back in correctly. GTFO time. I don't quite dare to kick the trapdoor into place. I just turn off the lights and bolt out the front door. Tonight is my night off, but I don't want my girlfriend to work alone either, so I'm hanging out with her. I didn't tell her what happened as I don't want her to freak out. Of course, I had to check the trapdoor again and found it closed normally. Most likely the maid fixed it when she came in. I don't know what to do. Someone tell me it was just a hungry hobo so I can sleep tonight. Also, sorry for the long-ass story. I just had to get all this off my chest.
It was probably someone from outside, most likely drunk, that came in looking for the bathroom or smokes. The drunk came in looking for his respective item of interest, tripped on the askew trap door. I have to assume you left it askew, OP, and then pissed himself. That's why you heard the wet slip-slap sound. He then tried to go to the bathroom to clean up, but when he found it was locked, his drunk mind took a while to figure out what to do next, which ultimately resulted in him leaving in a wet, stinking stupor.
So this isn't my story, but it's one my wife shared just the other day. Not especially scary, but something that I, as a skeptic, found modestly intriguing. I won't go into much detail, but my wife coordinates big-budget programs at a very important national landmark. I'm not going to name names, but if you're American or have any interest in American history, then you're already familiar with her workplace. It's a centuries-old property that receives many visitors each year, but which doesn't typically let non-employees enter the grounds after sunset, with the exception of a handful of candlelight tours each year, as well as the odd fireworks display. Anyway, to make a long story short, a small group of visiting professionals, who are being sponsored by her organization, showed up outside the site 2 nights back, buzzed security, and asked if there was any chance they could enter the grounds to take a picture of the strawberry moon. Security was purportedly a bit perplexed by the request, but surprisingly, agreed to let them in. The officer who authorized the request told them that there were no other visitors or employees present, and that they could wander around the back of one of the main historic buildings to take their picture, provided that they did not act disruptive and leave within 10 to 15 minutes. So these people did exactly what they said they were going to do. Took some pictures, lounged in some chairs for a few minutes, and then started heading back to the entrance. On their way back around the main building, they stopped to take a picture of the iconic facade when they noticed the very obvious flicker of flame or candlelight inside one of the windows. They told my wife that it was very clearly emanating from inside the building, and was too bright, vivid, and dynamic to have been a reflection or refraction. Furthermore, there were no outdoor sources of light. On their way out, They asked security to reaffirm whether they were the only persons on the property before telling one of the on-duty officers what they saw. The officer immediately went off to investigate because A, nobody else should have been on site, B, there are no artificial sources of light inside the building that would have been turned on or activated, and C, it's a centuries-old wooden building, and an open flame is very obviously a hazard. Security obviously didn't find anyone there, and there was no light by the time they arrived. Here's the part that I, as an actual skeptic, find intriguing. The visitors took photographs of the facade on their way in, which showed all of the windows being as dark and unlit as they should have been. They also took a picture of the light, which my wife showed me. It's honestly a little hard for me to explain. It's bright as day, has a noticeably fire-like center that is much darker shades of red and orange at its base, and is in the approximate shape of a period-appropriate oil lamp. There's also a bluish ring around it, of the sort you get when you take a picture of fire. Beyond that, it also seems to be very much within the building. You can see some of the light reflected on one of the window panes. I'm going to try to post the pictures later after checking with my wife. They're not mine to share, and they were just taken the other day by people collaborating with and being sponsored by her organization. If she's not cool with it now, I'll just try to crop them to a point where the building isn't recognizable. So not super scary, but I don't believe in any of this shit, and found it spoopy enough to not have a good explanation.
I work at a convenience pharmacy store, 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday, and the store is dead. Only me and my old supervisor. The supervisor is closing registers, and I'm cleaning up the store. Come out from back to a 7, maybe 10-year-old girl standing in the middle of the main aisle, wearing a witch's costume. It's mid-July. Ask if she needs any help, and she just giggles and trots off into an aisle. Okay, whatever. Get back to front and see there are about 3 more little girls running around the store, also in Halloween costumes. Stay up front and just keep watch while staying close to my supervisor. Have to go into the back again. Come back out 5 minutes later, and they're all gone. Same store, another Sunday night. 10 minutes to closing and haven't had a customer in an hour. Walking through the aisles, making sure everything is neat and clean. One aisle has this stupid coupon machine that plays an advertisement when you walk by it. Walking back to register down the main aisle when that thing goes off. Get spooked, 'cause I know there isn't anyone in the store besides me and the super, and I can see her from where I'm standing. Walk over, and there's no one. Say whatever, and continue back to the front. It goes off again. Rush to the front, 'cause fuck you very much. Nothing happened for the rest of the night. Here's another. Back at it again at the store, around 8 p.m. on a Saturday, so not too busy, and there are 4 of us. Me and my buddy are on the far side of the store doing inventory, while Super and other co-worker are near the register doing that on that side of the store. Just doing our thing, when I hear what sounded like a little girl shriek from the other side of the store, where other co-workers are. Look at Buddy, and he's as confused as me. Go check it out, and there are no customers in the store, and the other co-workers are middle-aged women who couldn't shout like that if they tried. Ask if they heard anything, and they say no. Nothing else happens, so just get back to work. I swear this place was built on an Indian burial grounds. Here we go again, about 7 p.m. on another Sunday, on register with only 3 people in line. Just doing my thing and talking to the customer. See what I can only describe as a large puff of smoke peeks out from behind the customer's shoulder, then dissipates in a way unlike smoke. I was obviously shocked because the customer noticed, but I regained my composure and finished up. Closing time, and asked Super if we could check the cameras that are watching my register. Try looking it up, but half of that day's tapes are just non-existent or haven't been recorded. Okay, universe, fuck you. Saved spookiest for last. Thursday night after hours, and we just got a shipment. Sorting out totes to their aisles. Open up totes and notices an ant, a soldier ant of all things. Suddenly get dizzy Vision blurs, hear what sounds like a rain stick, rice in a cylinder that imitates the sound of rain. I can only hear that sound, and my vision is focused on that soldier ant. Have a moment of clarity and kick the tote away from me. Fall back on my ass and just lie there, kinda stunned. The boss rushes over to see what's wrong. Just tell him I got lightheaded, 'cause I don't know how to explain that shit. The night continues as usual. I'm still living at home and everyone is gone for various reasons. So get home and hear what sounds like a chime coming from my room. My computer is on and the sound of do, 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 with the pitch increasing every couple of seconds. I can't figure out why it's doing this. Figured my computer was testing the speakers for some reason, but that wasn't the case. The sound keeps getting louder, and the volume controls aren't affecting it. Eventually, just shut the computer down, and it goes back to normal. Get a dog, and sleep with the lights on. So yeah, 3 years at that place, and still have no idea what the hell was with that building. It couldn't have been more than a 10-year-old building, as it was built in suburbs that haven't been there for more than 20.
I used to work on a farm in rural Arkansas. It was a quiet job with 2 other farmhands that didn't really talk to me, so I kept to myself. It was on a 20-acre plot and had the ruins of 3 small houses next to a larger house the farmer and his family had lived in for over 100 years. I suspected it was an old plantation, but being in the South, I kept my mouth shut, knowing that attention wasn't something we ever wanted. During the spring planting season, I was working alone as the farmer, and 2 other hands were at the market. I enjoyed the peace and quiet usually, but that day the birds weren't chirping. I didn't think anything about it because there was a thunderstorm the night before that made them have to rebuild their nests. I was told to clean and plow the western field deep so we could grow okra. Being muddy in the field, I grabbed my waders, 22, because alligators and snakes, and a shovel in case I had to dig out the tractor. I was about halfway through the field when I heard a loud scraping sound and the jingling of chains that made my hair stand up. I stopped the tractor and went to look at what made the sound. It was a thing wrapped in decaying cloth and rusted chains. Curious as to what it was, I ran back to the shed to get some bolt cutters. On the way back, I wondered why something would be buried in the overgrown field. I got a sickening feeling I couldn't place, but I shook it off because I was intrigued. I got back and cut the chains easily as they were weakened from years of rusting in the damp soil. Next, I began to cut the cloth. There were at least 30 layers, and when I was almost done, the piercing smell of rot hit my nose. But I grew up on a pig farm, so it didn't bother me too much. When I cut the last layer off, I saw something that reminds me of the horrors my grandpa described from the war. A mess of a corpse lay before me in the fetal position. The bones were mostly broken and limbs detached brutally. I ran to my truck and called my friend's dad, who was the sheriff, and told him I found a body. He pulled up half an hour later with 2 deputies roughly the same time as the farmer. The farmer jumped out of his truck and started yelling, asking why the sheriff was on his farm. The 2 deputies cuffed him and waited while I brought the sheriff to the body. He had a look of disgust on his face when he saw the tattered mess. He radioed for CSI to come from town to look at the body and had the farmer taken in for questioning. The farmer didn't do it, but his family did. It was probably a migrant worker who was resistant, and so the family made an example of him. I got fired from my job, but I'm fine with that. I don't want to dig up any more horrors from those plantation fields.
I was working at a phone survey company way back before these things became AI and Indian people driven, and I had a colleague with dwarfism. She was a fun girl and we joked around a lot during smoke breaks. One time it was a horrible rainy day outside. I got into the office soaking wet. Everyone was in the office on their phones already, but I just wanted a cup of hot coffee before I joined them. So I walk into the kitchen. There's a large faux leather carry bag on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee machine. There's no one around. It's totally quiet, except for the murmur of tens of people talking on their phones coming from the main office. I approach the coffee machine, begin to click the option for a double espresso, when suddenly the fucking dwarf jumps out of the bag, screaming. I swear my heart felt like it was exploding for a very long while. She pranked 10 people like this that day.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.